Hello and welcome to this presentation on what business will I create, where I'm going to explore some different models and approaches on creating ideas around how to develop new businesses, how to come up with ideas for your next new business. My name's Mike Kelly and I'm with S.C.A.M.P.E.R, and S.C.A.M.P.E.R is an organisation that helps marginalised communities develop entrepreneurs and create startups. First of all, let's be clear, nobody can come up with your business idea for you. One of the mantras that I always used as an entrepreneur was, if it's going to be, it's down to me. That's really important. This is at the core of being an entrepreneur. So this presentation really is about how do you even get started thinking about what sort of new business, new startup could you create. And in this presentation I'll be looking at some different frameworks and ideas just to give you a starting point, because often that's one of the biggest challenges. How do I even get started coming up with a business idea? First of all, we start by looking both internally and externally. And by internal, I mean looking at you, the entrepreneur. What are the skill sets and capabilities and experiences and training that you have? And then we need to look externally. What different markets could those skills be applied to? What's going on in those markets? What's the trajectory or the trend within those different markets and industries? And ultimately then we're trying to find an overlap between the two. So first of all, when we talk about internal, a good starting point is there anything that you're passionate about? Is there something that you would do even if you weren't paid for it? Sometimes this is a hobby, sometimes this is a unique skill set or training that you have. So when you're looking at what sort of business you can create, sure, you want to look at, well, how can I make money? How can this thing be viable? How can I get financial rewards from it? But within that, you also want to try to find something that's aligned with your own interests, not something that you're going to hate. And you also want to think about, well, what sort of industries have I worked in the past? What sort of things do I know that perhaps not everybody else does? And another key one is, what could give you an unfair advantage over other people in a particular area? This isn't completely necessary, and some of the things that I'll be talking about in this presentation will apply to very large businesses or startups with very large potential, but others will apply to simply micro enterprises, whether you have an idea for a food product or a service business, any sort of construction related business, those sort of things. But is there an area, for example in construction, or a trade where perhaps you have more experience or more training in something? So even at the micro business level, at say a trade, well, if you've got training in being a locksmith, well, what's coming on down the line here? Google, for example, have digital locks. Could you develop specific expertise where you can be the number one in Dublin or the number one in Ireland in that area? Or if you have specific experience in a particular technology, what could that be applied? And the next thing that we'll want to look at then is external. So outside of you, what's going on in different industries and markets where you could have an advantage? A good saying for startups is around business strategy, and strategy being where to play and how to win. How to win is your internal strengths and the internal strengths of your business, but where to play is really important. What markets can you develop a business for? What industries can you develop a business within? So where is your experience in terms of industries? Are there particular industries that you think you could have a unique advantage in? Are there any significant changes happening within that industry? And let's face it, there's huge changes happening within most industries. And I'm making this presentation in December of 2020. A lot of entrepreneurs are very concerned and fearful about the impact of COVID. I would say the opposite. I would say the changes that are being brought about by COVID represent some of the biggest opportunities since the dot-com crash or the financial crash of 2008. So what are the effects on the industry that you might be able to create a business in? For example, remote working, and even things then like Brexit, that's about to happen as I make this presentation. What are the impacts of that? Could there be opportunities for you? So, just because there are changes, that doesn't mean they're negative. Most successful new businesses are created in times of flux, in times of change. So, all of the changes that are happening within an industry that perhaps you could operate in represent opportunities for you. And a very good way of approaching understanding the changes within an industry is a framework called PESTEL. I won't go into it all here. You can look it up and learn more about it. But essentially, it's a systematic way of looking externally at an industry and market that perhaps you want to create a business in, and looking at, well, what's going on in terms of changes there. Are there political changes? Well, for sure, with Brexit, there are political changes happening that are going to affect every industry. That's the same for economic. And then the social aspect of every industry and every market, well, that's COVID. So there's huge changes going on there as well. Perhaps there are technological changes coming in. Maybe there's some environmental legislation coming in. Maybe there's some other legal changes that are happening to your business in terms of compliance and governance and so on, to that industry, I should say. So PESTEL is an interesting framework that will guide you through trying to see, where is this industry going, what are the changes coming on down the line, and where are the gaps that perhaps other competitors might not see that will present opportunities for you, so you can see changes that are coming that they won't see, and you can exploit those changes, and that will allow you to create a business in that area. And again, we don't have to talk about massive businesses here. These things can apply to hairdressers, barbers, bakeries, all sorts of businesses. If you want to create a food business, it's the same thing. So identifying what are the changes going on in these external environments, and how can I take advantage of that to build a new business. A really interesting one, and again, this is for larger businesses usually, but this idea of create a business for customers that are walking around with their hair on fire. Obviously, not literally, but these are customers who have really serious pain. Um, and that could be something related to Brexit, for example, if you had a technological solution, some software solution, or it could be COVID when it comes to things like testing. But also, maybe it could be a service business where your ability to COVID proof hairdressing or beauticians or something like that, it could apply particularly well to people who still feel vulnerable to things like that. So these are the people who are very afraid of the impact of something on them personally or on their business. And this is a really strong point for developing a business. Not everybody can do this. You don't have to have these sort of customers to create a successful business. But if you can identify them, it means you're probably going to have an overnight success. So looking for those sort of customers in the first place, as I say, if you don't find people who have that dramatic a need, it's okay. You still can have a viable business. The next thing then, once you've had a look at your internal strengths, the external opportunities, and if those terms sound familiar, it's very similar to a SWOT analysis where you're doing your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. But what you want to do then is start to validate and score some of these ideas. So what score would you give yourself in terms of a unique strength that you have in this area? Are there the hair on fire customers? Are there strong barriers to entry to new competitors? If you create a business and frankly everybody that you know can create that exact same business overnight, well then that's not a very defensible position. You may not have a sustainable business over the long term. Are there already very successful competitors that are entrenched? In other words, are there barriers to entry, high barriers to entry for you to enter this space? Is there a viable business model? And always remember, what's a viable business model for one person may not be for another. So if you have very low costs personally, you have very low overheads, well, then maybe a business that wouldn't work for somebody that has high overheads, high personal costs, it wouldn't work for them, but it could work for you. And similarly, how much capital and time is required to build and launch this. So if you're looking at launching a service business, baking or hairdressing or something like that, well, that's very low cost. If you're looking at creating a technology solution or something that requires a lot of infrastructure, well, then you may have to bring funding on from a very early stage. So all of these things will play into how viable are these different business ideas. And you shouldn't have just one. You should have multiple business ideas that you can score according to all of these different criteria, so that at the end of it you can choose from maybe 5, 10, 20 different ideas. Okay, I think this is my number one. This is the one that has the best chance of succeeding. This is the one that I'm going to run with. Okay, so now let's look at how we might be able to pull all of these things together using a framework uh, that looks externally at the market, then looks at your internal strengths as well, and then finds what we call an adjacent possibility. And this essentially is where all of these different things overlap to give you your initial idea. So finding the friction or the disruptive changes that are presenting opportunities in the external market and industry, and matching that with where you're passionate, where you have strengths. So finding that overlap is key to getting your initial idea. And then once you get that initial idea, that's when you need to start refining it and really finding what we call a strong value proposition. Where is it different? So this is the key thing that we really need to do. What can we change about this idea that will make it really unique, but not unique in an irrelevant way, unique in a way that's highly valuable to a specific customer set. So you can't expect the whole world to be interested in your idea. You want to find a particular market segment, a group of customers that find your particular offering very valuable and that they're willing to pay for it. And to do this, we're going to look at something called the S.C.A.M.P.E.R model. And again, I'm a big fan of these type of frameworks like Pastel and S.C.A.M.P.E.R because they simplify things that can be quite complex and overwhelming. So if you can follow a systematic model like Pastel to look externally, if you can follow the systematic model of S.C.A.M.P.E.R, then it logically leads you through one step to another, and you come out the other side of it and realize, oh, that actually wasn't as difficult as I expected. The S.C.A.M.P.E.R model is used in many different settings, but when you use it from a startup perspective, the idea is to take a look at what's an existing solution out there, a product or a service, and one that you perhaps might like to develop a business around. And then essentially look at how might you turn that business or that offering upside down. How could you come at it from different angles to see, is there a way that I can take what's out there in the market now and do something different that will add more value to specific customers, not all customers, just a specific set of them, which makes it more likely that they'll buy my offering instead of the competitors' ones. And S.C.A.M.P.E.R stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify or magnify, purpose, eliminate or minify, rearrange or reverse. So we'll go through each one of those, but essentially keep in mind that this is where you're at the point, you've looked externally at the changes in the market and the industry, you've looked internally at what are my core strengths, you've identified a couple of different business ideas, you've ranked them, and you've come up with one that you think, you know, this could be a runner. This is something that I could build a business around. It's at that point you look at what's out there in the market at the moment and how could I use this S.C.A.M.P.E.R model to maybe differentiate my offering in some way that will give me an edge. So let's look at the first one. What else could you do to this offering to make it more valuable to customers? So could you offer it in a different place? For example, the whole COVID thing. with all of the service businesses out there, whether it's beauticians, hairdressers, or anything like that, well, you're going to have to change how you deliver that. Can you deliver it in people's homes? Can you deliver it in a safer way? Can you use different people? Can you use different materials? Can you replace somebody who's already involved in that? Can you automate some of these things? Can you somehow change the rules? So depending again on what business this is, for example, a construction one, is there something else that can be done differently? Can I use different materials? If it's a food business, are there different ingredients that can be used? So when you look at Brexit, perhaps the raw ingredients for certain products are now much more expensive or much more difficult to get. Okay, well, can they be replaced? Or if you want to, if you've noticed that environmental changes are coming on down the line, well, is there an ingredient that can simply be swapped out to make this more environmentally friendly, more compliant with new legislation, or perhaps with social changes? Do customers, or do a certain segment of customers, want a product that is, I don't know, gluten free or something like that? And also, can I use different processes or different procedures to deliver my offering in a way that is different to competitors and is more valuable to certain customers? So that's some of the ideas you can think about when it comes to the substitute element of the S.C.A.M.P.E.R model. And combine is simply what other things could you bring to this offering in a combined way that could add more value. So perhaps you can combine something so that your offering can be used in more ways. Could you combine a hairdresser's and a beautician's, or could you link up with a beautician if you are a hairdresser and perhaps go to people's homes and deliver that? What can you combine in order to do something different or to lower the costs to customers? And the same goes for materials. Are there new materials that you can bring and you can combine, whether it's construction, whether it's baking, whether it's food production or something else? And also, is there anything that you can combine that will bring synergies? So where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is the 2 plus 2 equals 5 idea. Is there something that you can add that is different from the current offerings and that certain customers will think, you know, that is hugely more valuable? So if even if this product is 10% more expensive, it's still worth it to me because actually I'm getting double the value from this. And then adapt. What are the different things that can be adapted? Can I get inspiration from other products or processes, but in a different context? And here, really, we're talking about what's changing in other industries that could be relevant for my offering. So where we see a lot about crowdsourcing now, Uber, and all of those different approaches, or crowdfunding, this idea of a crowd mentality is really interesting. So is there anything that you can take from the likes of an Uber experience or from Amazon or something like that that can help you turn your industry on its head? What are the learnings from those changes in society, changes in technology that could perhaps be applied to your offering to give you an edge? What other ideas could I adapt or copy from other places? What other processes could I adapt? So if you think about the sort of logistics behind the Amazon model, well, could you exploit the Amazon model or the eBay model in order to turn to give your new business an idea? And then also, and this can be simply a design thing, what can I change in my offering that makes it very, very different from other ones? Can I make it somehow look bigger? Can I make it somehow look smaller? Can I exaggerate certain things that will really appeal to the tastes of a market segment? What can I make higher or bigger or stronger or smaller or weaker? What are the different ways that I can play around with this thing? Can I make it faster? Can I make it more frequent? Are there different features that I can add in that will be different to my competitors? But keep in mind, all of this must be done in the context of what customers want. Now, not all customers want the same thing, and that's why you have to segment customers into different groups. And depending on what you're looking at changing, you'll need to re-segment your marketplace again. And it's very important then to test out these different things with the different market segments. It will take time, it requires different iterations, but over time you might find, this particular mix of modification, magnification, substitution, combinations, all of these different things really are liked by a particular customer segment, and this is where my viable business is going to come from. And the same thing, what's the purpose of this product, and can you repurpose it? Can you take an existing business and look at how might that be applied somewhere else? Can I reach out to other users if I modify this product? Are there other customers who currently don't buy this offering, don't buy this solution, but perhaps they will want it now? Let's again take COVID as an example. Is there a business that was going into companies and being delivered to all of their employees within that company building? Well, okay, how's it going to happen now if 80% of their workforce is working from home? Is it impossible to deliver that to people in their homes? What are the other ways that it could be delivered to those people? And also, how can different buyers and customers could potentially use it? If you are looking at an offering that is typically used by males aged 40 to 60, well, how could it be perhaps modified and then offered to women, children, older people, younger people, all of that type of mix? So think about the purpose of it, and also look internationally. See, can you get ideas from other countries? Maybe other entrepreneurs have already gone down this route. Maybe they've taken that offering and completely respun it for a completely different market, and it has worked. So see if you can get ideas from there. And then what can be eliminated from your offering that's in your competitor's offering? So maybe you can offer a scaled down version that's cheaper and aimed at a completely different market segment, or perhaps you can scale down your offering and make it faster. Maybe it doesn't have to be cheaper. Maybe it simply has to be faster for a different customer segment. Maybe you can split the product into different pieces, or split your offering, even your service offering, into different pieces, so that something that was just too expensive for one market segment, well, if you split it down, you can still make the same profit, but you can aim that at a completely different market segment. So all of these different things can give you perhaps an edge over your competitors simply by breaking up the current offering and delivering that in a different way. And then the final one, rearrange, reverse. Take a look at your proposed offering and think, what if I just did this in a completely different order? Could that again deliver more value to the customers? Could it be done at a lower cost? Could it deliver better profits to me? What can I arrange in some way? Even if it's not a product, even if it's a service offering, you can still arrange things in a different way for people. An example is high-end barbers, where you're not just going in to get your hair cut. You can go in and you can have a beer while you wait. You can get all sorts of grooming, and compare that to just the standard barber where it's €8 for a quick haircut. So there's a whole lot of ways where you can not just sell a service, but suddenly sell an experience, and maybe you just need to reverse or chop and change the process that's involved. And these things have broad application. So if you think about it, restaurants were completely upended by the McDonald's approach. So McDonald's looked at, well, this is how restaurants work. They're kind of expensive usually. You can go in, you can chop and change, you can get everything differently. You typically want a full experience. You're typically going to be in there for maybe an hour or two. Well, McDonald's would have used something like the S.C.A.M.P.E.R model to say, why don't we turn this whole industry up on its head? Everybody tells us that this is what people want. Well, maybe it's not. We're going to test out some things. We're going to remove some elements of this whole experience. We're going to make it cheaper, faster, completely different experience, and let's see if it works. And of course, it did. The same goes for things like transport deliveries here in Ireland. Link Delivery now have upended much of the delivery industry by using taxis. So again, this is a way of taking an existing industry and turning it completely on its head, because COVID brought in a disruptive force that brought about different demands. So Link are clearly an example of a company who have taken an approach like this and seen an opportunity from it. The same could be for refuse collection. Arts and crafts is very interesting as well. So if you have a particular skill in, woodwork or crafts or something like that, Etsy, the online marketplace, is a fantastic platform through which you can sell internationally. And there's all sorts of ways that it can be changed, from different trades to things like bakeries and coffee shops and different retail environments. So this S.C.A.M.P.E.R model is not just for big players. You don't have to be the next General Electric or the next Tesla motor or the next big software company. This has applications, of course, for those industries and big projects, but also for micro businesses. So thanks for taking the time to come through this presentation with me. I hope it can challenge you and give you a systematic way maybe of approaching, where is my new business going to come from. Hopefully my aim for this was to try to stop it being so overwhelming, but also to put the onus back on people who come to me and say, Mike, I want to start a new business, what should it be? You're going to have to come up with that yourself. Put on your, as they say, big boy or big girl pants here. You're going to have to own this. However, these are some approaches that might be able to take away some of the mystery around it and give you some useful tools, platforms, processes that you can go through to help you come up with a new idea. If you have any questions or any comments about this presentation, do please feel free to get in touch. Also feel free to go on to the S.C.A.R.M.E.R website. There's more resources there as well. And I wish you well in your journey to becoming an entrepreneur, and please do feel free to get in touch if I can help.